Merced County's news voice since 1936. News Talk 1480, KYOS, Merced.
You're listening to Radio Merced. I'm Jacque MacDonald, and welcome to The Victim's Voice. And today our guests are a familiar face, Sergeant Scott Skinner from the Merced PD, and Detective Adrian, who's been on before, and welcome back. And
thank you for having us here, even though it's a day later than what we were told, but we're still here.
He'll never let me forget. We have a very sick dog, and he came on the wrong day. What do I have to give you so you'll forget it? I know. Anyway, today you're going to speak about graffiti.
Yeah, to start off with here, Detective Adrian was brought up to the investigations in 2008. At that time, he was assigned as the juvenile crime detective with the emphasis on graffiti. There was a big push from the citizens of Merced, the members of the city council, the mayor, to try to curtail this problem that we were having with graffiti. So Alan accepted that assignment and did an outstanding job with it. Yeah. I mean, he took it places where I don't think the chief, the district attorney's office, ever thought he would go to. I mean, he was able to validate several tagging crews as gangs. That doesn't mean much to a lot of people, but in court process, that means a lot for enhancements they can add on to these individuals committing the crimes.
Well, you're very dedicated, aren't you?
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And it was. I can't say he did an outstanding job with it, and he understood, what these people were writing out there and what they were doing. But unfortunately, probably starting around 2011, due to the current budget that state we're in, resources dwindling down at the police department. We lost a staff, not replacing people who have retired or left for different agencies. Alan has taken on a different role in investigations, where he's kind of doing a lot of things. He's moving towards more of the financial crimes, but he does auto theft, checks, regular thefts, and at times he's still now on the bigger graffiti cases, still kind of works on those, but it's not, he's not dedicated towards 100% of his time. But real recently, the city applied for a grant. The initials for the grant were CDBG. We were just informed of this. So now, since he's had experience in that, the grant's only good for 1 year. It partially pays for his salary, doesn't pay for his whole salary. So he's going to be looking into some more of these graffiti cases.
Is all the graffiti, ugly, or is some of it art?
Well, that's, I guess, different people's perspectives, but most of it in Merced is tagging crews.
It's tagging.
It's either tagging crews or gang graffiti. Okay. And there are a couple people in the tagging crews that would be considered very good, art type quality, but my position has always been, how do they get that good? They've had to do a lot of damage to get that good, and that's what we don't want, especially these crews. And yes, I still focus on the graffiti, but now I have to pick and choose on who's trying to be the most active, and it really has gone down a lot as far as what you see on the street. Part of that has to do with the painting crew that's doing an excellent job painting over it really quick, and the others is that we have over from 2008 till 2011, we arrested hundreds of these kids that were out there tagging, and a lot of them were repeat offenders. But once we were able to track what crew they're in, what their moniker is, what their style is, before we didn't have that ability. No one was going back and looking at old reports to see, this kid that got caught today tagging, what did he do? I mean, he's responsible for, 20 crime scenes over the last year. And then that was my position, to go in, focus on him, do the search warrants, go in his house, find his practice drawings, which match all the graffiti on the street, and connect him to those crimes.
See, just being an ordinary person, you know, not being in law enforcement, you see graffiti and you think, oh, what are they doing? Are they just being stupid? Mm-hmm. Or are they keeping in touch with each other? Is that what it's about?
Well,
I mean, what is graffiti?
It's, if you ask any tagger, you know, why they do it, you know, some will say it's, you know, because they feel like they're artists, but majority of them say it's for the fame, to be famous, to be known, to recognized. That's why they want to get up their work in as many places as possible. And back in the 90s, early 2000s, when we weren't focusing on it, it was us catching them in the act, you know, and that didn't happen often unless, you know, somebody called. Now, of course, everyone has cell phones, they can call out quicker, but we weren't going after them. It was catch them in the act, arresting them, and maybe turning them over to their parents if they were juveniles. But we took a harder stance because it was just getting out of control. All these crews were doing tons of damage. They were crossing each other out, which rival tagging crews were getting in fights.
Oh, gosh.
You know, you'll see that kind of graffiti on the walls with gangs when they cross each other out. It's a sign of disrespect, which can lead, especially in gangs, to more serious issues, you know, territory, that kind of thing. But the tagging crews were getting out of control, and now that we've arrested several of their members, some of these crews have just died off. They don't exist anymore. Several of them, you won't see them up anymore because most of their members have been arrested twice, three, repeat arrests, and they're done.
I know there's a 3-strike law. Does that apply to people that are arrested for things like this?
No.
Forgive my ignorance.
Yeah. The issue with graffiti before is when we weren't tracking how many times the juvenile had been arrested or the adult. When I got in this position, I started working with the probation department, started working with the district attorney's office, especially to recognize these kids in crews that are a group, to consider them gangs because they are committing a crime for the benefit of their crew, which is a gang. I mean, it's a gang offense. So we started charging them with the gang enhancements, and after we arrested 2 or more people in that crew, and the DA's office went after them with these gang enhancements. And for juveniles, it was something. They were doing juvenile hall time when they typically didn't do it before. You know, so.
But, you know, a lot of people don't realize is that these crews cost several $1,000s worth of damages. I mean, I can recall being in contact with someone with CHP. You know, of course, I refer to Alan because Alan had all this expertise in it, but they have put together a specialized unit for the freeway because of all the damages the crews were doing to the freeway signs, the billboards, and like that. So, I mean, is it a serious offense where violence is involved? Not necessarily, but it can lead to it because some of these crews have gotten into fights with each other where individuals have been killed, not around here, but in other parts of California.
Now, can you make the parents be responsible for paying for the paint?
They have tried, and the district attorney's office did try, especially with these repeat offenders, that however many hours of community service they had to do, that their parents were supposed to come to 50% of their community service. Has that happened? I'm not sure. I don't know.
Because we don't track that itself.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's after the case has been, you know, handled in through the court system, and we wouldn't have time to go back on all that.
I know now when you try and buy that spray paint, it's behind bars in some of the stores.
Yes, they've tried, especially some larger retail stores, to curb the easy access. But if they really want the paint, they're going to get it. one way or another, and you can go online or find out how to bypass their security and shoplift. I mean, that's happened multiple times. We get shoplifters and they're trying to steal paint to go out and tag. So.
Because it's funny, you want to buy some silver paint to spray your pine cones with for Christmas, and they're behind bars.
But unfortunately, it's individuals like these taggers who has caused problems for the normal citizens that would go out and buy the paint and use it for their own personal use, the recreational stuff, like you said, decorating ornaments or something like that, or spray painting projects around the house.
Now, are they fined when they're arrested, or are the parents fined?
Yes, typically once we find a kid or get information on what his moniker is, what his tag name is, and I go back on the data, database to find out how many reports we have on them. If we hit their house, find their spray paint, their practice drawings, connect them to the crimes. When they go to court, they have restitution to pay, and it all depends on how much damage they've done.
So, Al, can you give her an idea how many tagging crews we have here in town?
Over the years, since I started tracking it full-time back in 2008, about 14 crews have been documented in Merced. That's through the arrest of several members of a crew to make them classified as a gang or a tagging crew. Now, like I said, back in the 90s, early 2000s, that generation that was doing a lot of damage, once I started, we started arresting people that were in their early 30s, adults with little kids, because they were never tracked. I was focusing on that generation back in 2008, 2009, 2010, the juveniles, 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, and we arrested, like I said, hundreds of those kids. I've seen a major drop-off in the actual amount of graffiti on the street, the visible graffiti, because they know if they're going to try and do a bombing run, which means go out at night and hit as many places as they can, it's going to catch my attention, and that's who I'm going to focus on. So we don't see that as much anymore. But the next generation will come up. And I've seen it when I've gone to these houses, the ones I'm arresting, they've got little brothers, the ones that look up to Big Brother. In that generation back in 2008, 2009, they were looking up to their older brothers. So hopefully these younger ones will see their brothers getting arrested, being hauled off in a cop car, and that it's not actually visible all over the place anymore. I mean, it's still out there, but it's not just everywhere. That it doesn't catch their interest, and then they just never start.
So how many kids are in a crew?
It depends on the crew. I mean, some of the crews from back in the 90s, the original crews in this town, there was 2 to 3 like really active crews, and they recruited, and like I'm talking about the different generations in the crew. Sometimes now we're looking at 3rd, 4th generation of people in their crew, and these crews can get big, 50 people. Typically it's 10 to 15 maybe. Some of those older crews, especially as these guys get older, and if we've arrested them, they'll stop or they won't. There's only a couple crews that, even though we've arrested their members again and again and again, they're not stopping.
And did I ask you this question? Do you make them clean it up?
Typically not. Right now with this grant, I am working with students at different schools, and we're going to be, the next couple weeks, going out and painting over graffiti in some of the parks that are hit the most. And I asked the schools to have kids volunteer that need it for community service, for college applications. Typically not the kids that are already arrested for graffiti, because before, years ago, the painting crews, or the company in charge of the painting over graffiti, they would have these kids, probationers, and they would then know what places are clean, and they would just go hit them again. Or they would tell their friends, oh, this place is clean. This is clean. You can go hit this place. So we typically, or the kids that were painting over graffiti were tagging while they're supposed to be painting over graffiti. So we typically don't use kids that are involved in graffiti.
Yeah. So what's the answer?
I don't have it. Seriously, I mean, I think we can curtail it a little bit, like Alan has done over the past years. But unfortunately, for some reason, people get their kicks out of going damaging other people's property.
I mean, it's a
showing off, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's a
global issue. I mean, all over the world there's graffiti, and in some places it's more accepted than others, and you see it advertised on commercials. It's around. It's large cities. It all depends on the kids and if they think it's something they want to get into, or if they're drawn to it by other members saying, hey, come join our crew. It's a way of being accepted. So, I mean, it will continue, but as long as I'm in the position where I have time to focus on the ones that are doing the most damage, I mean, they know that before they didn't have somebody tracking them, and after repeatedly arresting these guys, I mean, they know who I am, and they know their buddies in different crews. When I finally get to them, they're like, oh, yeah, I was waiting for you. Sometimes they knew it was coming.
And what was amazing is when he would go to these houses with the search warrants or whatever, you expect like one can of spray paint or two. I mean, he was bringing back literally 30 cans of spray paint. It was just a large number. I mean, I couldn't see any parent allowing a kid to have this inside their house.
Where would you store it?
It was just in the rooms. It was everywhere. I mean, several times he would show me pictures of, the parents. And this is the parents being naive to the whole thing, or just want to turn the other way, where the whole room would be graffitied, in cons or, whatever their moniker is.
And who pays for all this paint? It's expensive.
Well, like I said, it's usually shoplifting.
Oh, shoplifting. But now it's behind bars, so it's harder.
Well,
but I mean, also you could do it like how kids get alcohol. Get some adult to go in there and buy them a can of spray paint,
and some of these older generation guys in the crews, they're in their 20s. They go buy the paint for the younger guys at hey, give me $10 and I'll get you 2 cans of spray paint. They're making a profit off it. So if they want to get it, they can get it. It's
like guns, if you want one, you'll get one. Whatever they do.
And when he first initially started with this, Alan was going after him. Now, and was doing a little bit of preventive type thing education-wise, but now this grant is leaning a little bit more towards that, to going out to the schools and talking to the kids, making them aware of this, what could happen and like that. So hopefully we'll cut it down to even a little bit more. And I think a big part of it is, I don't know the name of the company that does the graffiti paint over now.
Environmental Compliance Resources.
But they're quick about it. I mean, once Alan got into it, it was like, hey, I got graffiti over there. They're over there cleaning it up.
Yeah, but what does it cost? Are you allowed to say for them to clean up?
Well, they're contracted with the city of Merced, and I can't recall off the top of my head the exact number that they were contracted with the city to paint over, like the parks and the bike path. But it was hundreds of thousands of dollars just for the city of Merced.
And we're not very rich in Merced, are we?
No.
No, gosh. And sadly, we're almost at the end of the program, so you gentlemen close it.
Anything like that?
Well, like you said, with this grant, I'm going to be working with the kids at the high school levels to go out and actually paint over some graffiti. Even though the painting crews are doing an excellent job, there's always going to be some small graffiti. The graffiti now that we're seeing is very small. It used to be really huge, the huge bubble style. Big, and it's, I view their photos, and we're not seeing that anymore. But we're going to have these kids go out and paint over graffiti, and I'll be going and talking with them in schools, and the ones that decide to do graffiti, I'll eventually...
Yeah, and this is our town. This is where we all live. They live here too. Their parents live here too.
You know, and hopefully we can keep this
town.
program kind of going.
Yeah.
You know, maybe bring up somebody that now that Alan's moving away out of that area, somebody to, you know, to take his spot in that area and keep this a full-time position, because, you know, like I said, unfortunately this was a grant position, so we only have it till July. You know.
With all the jobs you're doing, do you ever get to go home?
Oh, yeah.
Does your dog recognize you? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
With that, anything else? Because we're almost over.
Yeah, you know, I know this has nothing to do with the topic, but I just want to remind people here, we got the holiday seasons coming up, you know, to be extra careful out there. You know, I'm sure people have already started their Christmas shopping. The scams are out there like crazy. You know, my mom got a call the other day from somebody saying this was the FBI. Just wanted to let you know that there was a recent burglary in your neighborhood, and you have been selected by a friend to receive an alarm system here. You know, if you hear anything like that, that is a scam. I mean, the FBI is not going to be warning people about residential burglaries. I mean, the Merced Police Department, we don't have time to call people to say, we've had burglaries in your neighborhood, you know. So if you hear anything like that, you know, do not fall for it, because what they're trying to do is get it into your house to either possibly case it, so you become a victim of burglary, or more likely, they're going to try to sell you an alarm system, get your credit information or something, and compromise your credit, your checking account, savings account, and you would never get an alarm system.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the good information. And thank you, Detective Adrian, for making our city better.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening, and may you never walk in our footsteps.
Merced County's news voice since 1936. News Talk 1480, KYOS, Merced.